welcome to this new video for my channel, The Mental Traveler. I'm Carol Herrera and today I'm going to be talking about the story of Les Miserables. I will be talking about the book, which was written by Victor Hugo and published in 1862, and three of its adaptations. The 1988 film starring Liam Neeson, Geoffrey Rush, Uma Thurman and Claire Danes, the 2012 musical based on the stage production with Hugh Jackman, Russell Crowe, Anne Hathaway, Amanda Seyfried, Helena Bonham Carter, Elliot Redmayne, and many more, and the 2018 miniseries with Dominic West, Lily Collins, Olivia Colman, Derek Jacobi, and David Oyelowo. Before I begin though, let me just say that this will be a video with some spoilers, so beware. This is a really long book and it spans decades, so there are a lot of things going on all of the time. The main character though is a man called John Valjean. When he was young, he stole a piece of bread and was sentenced to prison. We meet him after he's been a convict for almost 20 years, and one of the first things he does after he's been released is to steal some silver from a bishop. When the police discovers this theft, John fears he'll be sent back to prison, but the bishop saves him, and this helps change John's life forever. Very shortly after this, something pivotal happens to him, and thanks also to his experience with the bishop, John resolves to always do good and be the best Christian ever. For this though, he decides to change his identity and become a fugitive, if he really means to have a chance to make as much as he can of the second opportunity he's been granted to start again. One of the other important characters of this story is Fantine, a beautiful girl who is deceived by her lover. She becomes a young mother and we follow her as she ends up being unemployed, destitute, and does desperate things in an attempt to feed her little girl. For several reasons, her path and that of John Valjean cross, and the latter promises Fantine that he will always look out after her daughter Cosette. So John becomes a sort of father figure for Cosette, but despite the fact that John has so far spent years keeping to his word of being a good man and treating everyone he meets kindly, the shadow of his past still haunts him. Being a convict in hiding means that he has to look over his shoulder constantly, particularly because there is this police inspector he met when he was a prisoner who never forgot him. His name is Javert, and he doesn't think John Valjean can be redeemable. Anyways, the story starts around 1815 with events concerning Napoleon, and towards the end it's around 1832 because the author wanted to show us in detail what happened during the June Revolution of that year, which was an anti-monarchist insurrection. This is important to the story of John Valjean because one of the revolutionists is a young man called Marius, who has fallen in love with a grown-up Cosette. All in all, the story of Les Miserables is too vast and epic to describe in just a few minutes, but I hope you all got the general idea. I give the story of Les Miserables a 5 out of 5 stars review. Although I still prefer The Hunchback of Notre Dame, I thought that Hugo's most famous work is outstanding, and I'm so happy that I finally gave it a chance and read it because it has everything that a good novel should possess. I mean, I don't even know where to begin with my review. It's quite a long story, as I've said before. It took me around 5 days to read it, but I love the way that Victor Hugo managed to weave history, love, religion, and politics into this vast tapestry of irony and humanity. As an aspiring writer myself, I am in awe of all the amount of research and detail and dedication the author of Les Miserables put into it. He spent decades writing it, and yet the final product is a book with a very smooth writing style, very engaging and full of memorable characters that leave you with tons of food for thought, and well, no wonder that this is one of the most famous French classics out there. And since I'm talking about Victor Hugo right now, I think that it's really cool how he wrote The Hunchback of Notre Dame in his early 30s and that Les Miserables was published in his 60s. And this is because you can tell by comparing the two works how much he grew not only as an author but as a human being. Les Miserables is a more ambitious project, but I mean, for example, The Hunchback of Notre Dame is a story full of the burning passions we feel when we are young, and compared to Les Miserables, which is a story that for me was more of a work of reflection. What I think I'm trying to say is that you can tell that Hugo was a younger man when he wrote The Hunchback of Notre Dame and an older man when he wrote Les Miserables. But yeah, anyways, I learned so much from it. For example, as I said earlier, I love history and I love France. I didn't really know that much about what happens after the French Revolution, because for me, my favorite period in this country's histories have been the reign of Marie Antoinette and Louis XVI, and then I sort of skipped over the 19th century, and then I get into it again with the Belle Epoque and World War I and the Roaring Twenties, and then up to World War II. But yeah, anyways, now I know in greater detail what happened after Napoleon was defeated and what came afterwards that began to shape France into the republic that we know today. And it's also cool to think that Victor Hugo was a young man when the events of the last part of Les Miserables, the June Revolution, took place, and that he still remembered decades later and he wrote a book about it, lest we forget. Moving on though, what I loved the best about Les Miserables was the character of Jean Valjean, the protagonist. Which I think is funny because before I read the book, his storyline was what I think kept me away from it. Meaning that when I was younger and I learned that Jean Valjean wasn't really a romantic lead, because he doesn't have a sweetheart or anything throughout the book, that upset me and made me lose interest. Because I really love my romance in my novels. But now that I've read the book, this is actually what makes his character such a literary treasure. Seeing as love makes us selfish in a way, and if Jean had had a girlfriend, a betrothed, a wife, he may not have done many of the things that make me admire him so much in this novel. Personally, as a reader, it was quite beautiful and refreshing to meet a character like him, and he was so different from other protagonists that I usually care for. And I mean, it must be a privilege for actors to play him because his is such a good role and he's such a good human being. He is the ultimate superhero in a way of classics. Finally, as to Victor Hugo's writing style, I also prefer the plot and the way he handles things in The Hunchback of Notre Dame, seeing as it had more conversations and there's more detail in certain aspects because the plot is more concise and takes place in a shorter period of time. And I did feel in certain bits that Les Miserables, its author is telling us rather than showing us certain things. For example, the love story of Marius and Cosette. But it's okay, it doesn't really take any of the charm of the book. Victor Hugo, he wrote some very pretty, powerful, intense, wonderfully written chapters in Les Miserables. For example, the ones where Jean Valjean goes through some crisis. The good side of him is having to fight with the bad side of him. And although all of these are sort of internal monologues, there's some pretty amazing writings in them. In the end, Les Miserables made me laugh, it made me cry, it made me thoughtful, it made me anxious, and during the last chapters I was bawling my eyes out because they were so moving, so touching, and I didn't want to say goodbye to these characters one bit. As to the 3 adaptations I wanted to review, the 1996 version has its good and its bad things. I think Geoffrey Rush as Javert was wonderful. He's my favorite Javert. And I also enjoyed that during his scenes with Cosette, Liam Neeson managed to transmit that his soul was tired and yet kind and soothing. The movie changes and shortens a lot of the things that make this story great, but I still recommend it and will rewatch it again someday. The 2012 musical is pretty cool, and what most inspired me was the challenge of transforming such a big novel into a musical. The performances are good, but they skip so much of the plot that now that I've read the book, I feel like I get why I didn't love the movie before. There's not enough time to really invest this viewer into getting to thoroughly know the characters and care for them as much as they deserve. And as to the 2018 miniseries, I enjoyed it because it was the first adaptation I saw after I read the book, so I knew the characters and was fond of them by then. I really like the way they included Marius' childhood, for example, since more popular adaptations have failed to show this. There were some things that I didn't really like though. For example, how violent West's version of Jean Valjean was, or his relationship with Cosette, the way it was portrayed. And well, the Javert in this version, I didn't really get why he was so obsessed with Jean. They didn't really go into much detail into it, so it was a bit misleading why he wanted to hunt down Jean so much. Still, I do think that Lily Collins' portrayal of Fantine is my favorite one so far. And finally, just a fun fact, I thought it's really cool and cute how Derek Jacobi played the bishop in this version of Les Miserables, seeing as he also played a priest in the 80s adaptation of Hugo's other masterpiece, The Hunchback of Notre Dame. And Derek Jacobi played one of my favorite portrayals of one of my favorite characters ever, definitely my favorite character of The Hunchback of Notre Dame, Claude Frollo. There is also a 2000 TV version with Gerard Depardieu and John Malkovich of Les Miserables, and while they're both fantastic actors, I haven't seen it yet. It's on YouTube. I hope though that one day I can see the musical, but in the meantime, for those who have seen it, would you say the 2012 movie is a faithful adaptation to the musical production? Despite my love for period dramas, history, French classics, to my shame, up until recently, I never really cared for the story of Les Miserables. Growing up, I guess the title didn't really appeal to me, and because it didn't really seem like a love story, I didn't care that much for it. First time I remember seeing an adaptation of this story, though, was in my early 20s, and I was watching TV, and I saw this period drama with Liam Neeson and Claire Danes. Looked interesting. The film was almost over by then, and I saw the rest of it, but I still didn't really care that much. When the 2012 musical came out, I got excited because of the cast, because it was a period drama, because it was a musical, and because I wanted it to be my real introduction into the story. And well, for one reason or another, I didn't even finish that one. Still, when I saw the trailer for the most recent adaptation, I really wanted to watch it. A week before it aired, I finally decided to read the book, because I was going through this period of reading as many French classics as I could from the 19th century. And since Victor Hugo Hugo's other masterpiece, The Hunchback of Notre Dame, is one of my favorite books ever. I thought it was high time I became properly familiarized with the story of Les Miserables. For the moment, though, I believe I still have to say for this story. Please let me know if you agreed with what I said or not, and what are your own thoughts of Les Miserables, because I would love to talk about Hugo's work with you. In the description box below, you can find a link to the Goodreads page for the book, as well as a link to 1998, 2012, and 2018 IMDb pages. I'm Carolina, the Mental Traveler, and I hope you have a wonderful day wherever you are in the world. I'll be seeing you soon. Adieu.